All right, Danita, it's 11:01. I think we can get started.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have a diverse group of leaders today, which I'm very excited about. We've got from business owners and leaders in startups to established businesses, new concepts to legacy businesses. We have nonprofit leaders, parents, grandparents, and all stages of leadership, from senior leaders that are looking at how they can continue to imprint their leadership legacy, to millennial leaders who are looking at how they can develop their culture. So we have a common calling. We all are looking for insights on how we can build a strong leadership culture so that we can grow our business, transition our businesses to reach their full potential. So our goal today is to provide practical, rubber meets the road tips, tools, talk tracks to help you as you nurture, build, develop your next gen leaders. So with that, I'm Danita. I know many of you, some of you don't know. I'm a executive coach and sales development expert, and I've recently written a book called Millennials Matter: Proven Strategies for Building Your Next Gen Leader. And my co-facilitator is...
Hey guys, good morning. Great to be with you today. My name is Brandon Schaefer, and I'm the founder and CEO of 5 Capitals Coaching and Consulting, headquartered here in South Carolina. And like Danita, I have a background in the corporate world, in corporate coaching. God then called me into the ministry world. I was executive pastor of 2 different churches before launching 5 Capitals. And now for the last 10 years, we've been doing coaching and consulting for business leaders, executives and their teams, really all across the globe, but primarily here in the U.S. And hey, Danita and I met about 5 years ago at a conference in Minneapolis, and we have been fast friends and collaborating ever since on a number of projects and issues. And it's just super exciting, not only to be at the book launch in Minneapolis just a few months ago, where I met some of you, but also to be here today for this taster webinar to give you kind of an overview of issues, as well as talk about solutions and applications. And so, hey, over the next 45 minutes, you might be wondering, what are we going to be covering? What are we going to be getting into? And we just want to outline 4 key things. Number 1 is we want to give you the challenges. Hey, we know it's difficult out there, and every new generation, every new group of people that comes into the workforce has its own opportunities and issues, and we want to hit those head on. We want to walk you through the challenges, talk you through what we're seeing, so that hopefully you can connect and resonate with those few that you're seeing as well. And a lot of the challenges, we want to give solutions. We're going to overview. Danita's going to walk us through key concepts, 6 key concepts that can help you lead more effectively. Not only this next generation, but all around, leading better at home, with your board, with your executive team, as well as these millennials. So an overview of key concepts that are really holistic in nature. Lastly, we want to give you some practical tools, and we're going to deep dive into one specifically that you can implement even this afternoon and think about over the weekend and start being a better leader next week. So we're going to deep dive into that tool. And then lastly, we want to give you next steps to journey with us. If you're interested in a webinar series, if you're interested in coaching or more content, maybe a speaking event with your organization, Danita is going to walk you through that, and we'd love to follow up and be in connection. So those are the 4 things: the challenges, the concepts, the practicalities, and the next steps that we're going to be covering here in the next 40 or so minutes. Hey, just a couple housekeeping with the webinar. Number 1 is we're going to be sending you the recording. So if it's too much to take notes, don't worry about it. We're going to be more than happy to send you that recording out so that you can listen to it. Number 2 is that if you've got questions, we'd love to hear them all throughout the webinar. Just go to that Q&A box that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can type in those questions. We're going to be monitoring them and answering those questions as it makes sense within the flow. And then lastly, is we're also going to do a in-platform survey After we answer and talk through the tool, the practical tool, we're going to be having a survey pop up, but you can take that survey and then we'll be following up for next steps as well. So again, with Danita, I add my welcome and grateful you guys are with us, and we're going to dive right into the content. Danita, go ahead and kick us off, walking us through, man, these leadership challenges. They're tough. This next generation, right? Lots going on. Walk us through the leadership challenges as you're seeing them here today.
Well, there is a lot going on. Millennials will comprise the majority of the workforce by 2025. So we have millennials growing, and baby boomers are retiring at a rapid and accelerated rate. And in many industries, as we shift from a knowledge culture to a technology culture, there's almost a panic about how do we get these millennials, often called Gen Y, how do we get them up to speed, not only just on the knowledge, but just with the leadership capacity. What we know when we listen to the media is that there is a tremendous amount of fake news out there. Millennials, according to the news, are all entitled, narcissistic, living in their parents' basement. And yet, I would suggest that you and I know people who break that paradigm. So my question is, what's the real news? And in looking for real news, I did a survey with leaders to get their insights on what are they seeing real world with the millennials that they're working with. In a survey of over 300 leaders, 60% of the leaders actually raised their hand and said, yes, I do have some concerns, some frustrations. And the three areas that we were able to chunk those concerns into are character, collaboration, and confidence. And let me just give a kind of a high level of that. Character. They expressed concerns that it seemed like many of the millennials that they were working with lacked the grit and determination to tackle difficult projects, kind of leaving management and leadership in the lurch. Why is that? They found that a large portion seemed to blame anyone and everything for a lack of results versus taking personal responsibility. So those were some concerns under the character area. Under confidence, 53% of the leaders in our millennial survey said that the know-it-all attitude was a concern to them. And yet, listen to this quote by a leader. He said, "It seems like they get like Jell-O when dealing with a surprise. Something they couldn't readily find an answer to on YouTube or Google." So there's this dichotomy of this, what seems like maybe overconfidence, and yet when they reach an obstacle, they become Jell-O. Many of them do. So we've got character, confidence, and then the third area was collaboration. And as I was doing the research, I had a number of colleagues say, "Danita, this generation is great at collaboration." Yes, when it comes to using online tools, and maybe even collaboration when we agree with each other. What business leaders are finding real world is when there is conflict or confrontation of some sort, the collaboration flies out the window. So when we have a difficult situation or a difficult person or a challenging topic or multi-generational communication, that they're seeing breakdown. So in our survey of over 300 leaders, Brandon, those were the three areas that we found business leaders expressing concerns with: character, collaboration, and confidence. So I'm curious, that's what we found in our survey. Brandon, in the work that you're doing as you're talking to leaders, how are they vocalizing these? How kind of bring us up to speed on some of the insights on the clients you work with.
Yeah, Danita, two things I would say. Appreciate that overview and that perspective on some of the highlight problems that we're seeing. I think the two things I would just highlight, probably one falls into that character category that you talked about. Many of our leaders say, how do we get them to buy in? You know, they almost seem aloof. They seem like, you know, they're so focused on kind of work-life balance and wanting to have their life outside of work and kind of just putting in the hours, doing what they can and leaving. You know, this problem of real buy-in and grit and determination. It feels like a character flaw in their work ethic at time and their commitment. And I think for the boomer, there's such a, you know, the older generation has such a mentality of, man, if I want my paycheck, if I want to keep this job, I have to do it and have to be it all in. And there's a mobility and a lack of worry with this younger generation to where they come off that way. And so there's this character challenge of real buy-in and work ethic that I see. Secondly, I see probably fits under that collaboration piece. Well, people say, hey, how do I get these younger generational leaders to stick around? I've got leaders who are promising, and after 6 months, they're off to the next opportunity. And I feel like I'm doing the right things. I feel like I'm paying them well. What do they need to keep them progressing within the organization and not just get the training they need and say, hey, I want to move with my buddies to Florida or whatever. And so that real buy-in and work ethic is the first one. And then secondly is that sense of perseverance and longevity. What are the incentives I need to offer? Because the old incentives don't seem to be working. That have them stay with my company longer than 6 to 18 months, especially the promising ones. I want them to grow with the company as the company grows, for example.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm seeing, especially in industries where there's a tremendous amount of knowledge, is it feels like you invest so much time, effort, and energy in training them. And then when they're off, it's, I don't even know the word, sick to the stomach. Well, and it just has a huge impact on the bottom line, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Danita, I think you were the one telling me that, you know, when it comes to this next generation, professors and industries even telling them, if you want to, you know, get to where you want to go, you got to have, you know, 6, 8, 10 jobs in the first 15 years. And we all know that is one way, but not the only way. And certainly longevity and consistent promotion can oftentimes get you to the level of leadership you want to be at as a young leader faster.
Yeah.
So long as you select that right company. So they've got some unhelpful things they're being told that I don't think were being told 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. That's really true. Well, I just want to remind everybody, feel free if there's questions and specific scenarios. Brandon and I want to make certain that we're targeting what you need from our time together. So I'm watching the chat box. I'm sure Brandon is too.
Yep. Hey, Danita, we're having a couple questions come in, and let's get to them after maybe you move through our next section, which is, in light of the challenges, let's talk solutions. Let's talk the 6 key solutions that you walk through in your book that we can kind of grab onto and engage with.
That sounds great. So there was 6 key solutions, and that fall into the 3 categories. So under the first solution, under character, is to have a courageous character core, to cultivate that in our leaders. And we as senior leaders know that character impacts every single decision we make, every conversation, every role, every responsibility. It is our core that moves out from us. It impacts everything we do. So as leaders, as we're developing our culture, how do we help our young leaders develop that strong character that is going to take them through the ups and downs of leading, where they can do what is right, even though it's uncomfortable? Also under character is this concept I call proactive self-care. Every leader that I have respect for over the long term has built into their leadership rhythm a time of reflection where they can reflect back on where they've been and how that's moving into the future. And in our culture, that time of reflection seems almost impossible to get with the constant onslaught of messages coming from media and technology. So how can we help our young leaders develop a rhythm that will allow them to sustain leadership over the long term? So those are two ideas under character. Under confidence, I call it the impact mindset. Our culture is having a purpose crisis. Just look at Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life. It was a massive, massive hit. Our millennials are also having a purpose crisis, and they are seeking that. So how can we as leaders help our emerging leaders to discover, identify, nurture the purpose in their own life so they live meaningful lives on the personal side, and that is integrated into their work life and into their career? What might we do to help them? And I call it a win-win-win. When we get that to happen, that's a win for the emerging leader. It's the win for us and whatever our enterprise is. And it's a win for our client or whoever we're serving. It's a win-win-win. Sisu spirit. I grew up in a Finnish community, and sisu is a word that means grit, determination, unreasonable fortitude to pursue one's goals. One of the concerns that we hear about the millennial generation is that many of them lack sisu. How do we as leaders come alongside them and help to develop the capacity to fail forward or fail upward, so that failure is a stepping stone in their leadership journey? So those are two ideas under collaboration, and then we move to I got mixed up on my slides. Those are two ideas under confidence. Under collaboration, we have relationship wiring. How do we help the millennial identify their own gifts and talents so they can work synergistically with others on the team, which means that they have to appreciate the perspectives and gifts and talents from others on the team. That collaboration creates the synergy needed for our businesses and our enterprises to grow and to thrive. And then finally, I call it an investment effect. talents only become strengths when they are used to serve others. So how do we help our millennial leaders take their talents and leverage those into strengths by serving others? So it's a servant leadership perspective in a culture which has a tendency to be narcissistic in nature. So those are some of the key strategies that we have in millennial leadership. How do we build character? How do we focus on confidence? And how do we help develop a very collaborative culture? So Brandon, as you see those kind of key strategies, what are some questions that come to mind for you, or what are some thoughts and ideas that come to mind for you?
Well, Danita, I really like those 6 points. Super helpful to see them organized and overviewed in that way, whether it's the chapters of your book or just working through the PowerPoint slides here these last few minutes. A couple of things that really resonate with me that I just want to highlight. Number one is when you talk about proactive self-care, one of the ways we say that is you got to be a leader worth following. This next generation realizes that they can choose who their leader is. And I think older generations are kind of like, hey, I'm grateful that I have a job. My boss is a jerk, but I'm paying the mortgage. And this next generation says, you know what? I don't want to follow that leader. And we've worked with so many young leaders that we interview in a safe place. We say, why are you considering leaving? Or why aren't you going to stay here long term? And they say, you know what? I don't like the language that comes out of my leader's mouth. I don't like the fact that my leader is overweight. I don't like the fact that my leader demands so much of us, but tends to do so little. And so you got to really walk the talk, because if you're not, your younger leaders, they'll leave. They'll walk. And so that proactive self-care, that integrity is really important, because more than ever, this younger generation is watching. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, I'm going to go work for that company because that leader, whether I'm passionate about the industry or not, that leader inspires me. That's who I want to work under. And we all know there's lots of toxic leaders and lots of leaders that have been exposed in the last decade. And so that one's a big deal. A couple other things I'll connect with that I really appreciated, really enjoyed, was the investment effect, that last one. This next generation of leaders, hey, pour into me. I want to be better. I want to learn. I want to grow. And I am a little insecure, though I may not admit it. And so if you proactively serve me, bless me, invest in me, wow, that speaks volumes. That says a lot. And so being a leader worth following, proactive investment, and then the third one is gosh, get to know them.
Yeah.
Get to know them. They're not a generation; they're a person, yes. And there's such a high value for community in these younger generations. But yet, we call it crowded isolation. They're texting everybody, but no one. And so take them to lunch at that extra time to just get to know them, to connect with them. Oftentimes, if that leader is worth anything, they'll give back to you in loyalty and work ethic in spades. If you just take the time to really get to know them, not just what they can do for your organization. So does anybody want my life? Am I a leader worth following? Yeah. Am I proactively investing? And am I taking the time, creating the space to get to know them? Three things that you've highlighted there that I just kind of give that application
Absolutely. to. There were in the production of Millennials Matter, I sent the entire manuscript to a number of millennials and asked them for feedback. And there were a couple of things that were an interesting surprise to me. One is, I hate being branded as a millennial. Because, let's be real, they want to be seen as a unique individual, and so do we. But what happened is, in our culture, we would put up with being being a number. This group doesn't. And so one of the ways that we can connect with them as an individual is what you call relational capital. We need to sit down and have coffee and have some hangout time with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that has rich rewards.
Yeah, amen, Danita. Great reflection questions for everybody on the call. Am I investing? Do I know them? And am I a leader worth imitating? Would I want me to be my boss? Right? That's great. Hey, Danita, let's answer a few questions. I'm going to give you a question to think about, and then I'm going to answer the question because I've had an unfair advantage of looking at these while you were overviewing the 6 solutions.
Perfect.
So, a quick question for you to think about is this next generation, are they more passionate than previous generations? And if so, in what areas are their passion? So I'll leave you with a question for a moment to think about around passion. While I answer the question, hey, what can we affirm millennials for? Someone asked the question, what are millennials better at? Or what do millennials do better than we do? Well, I think they do better at the things that they naturally prioritize more than previous generations. I think they do community and relationship better. I think that's a priority for them, a connection for them. I think they've seen their parents kind of overwork and work too hard only to lose their whole 401k in 2008. And so because of that, work is a more balanced priority alongside relationship. I think many of them prioritize relationship and community more than previous generation. Secondly is, man, technology's always changing. They have grown up with just the new apps, the new iPhone. And so I think like other generations, but more so with this one, is they're really good at innovation and ideas. And so lean on them, how your company can innovate and be cutting edge. Trust some of their ideas and try a few, see what happens, pilot them. And then lastly is I think millennials are better at work-life balance. I think on the whole, that boomer generation saw their parents try to lift out of the Great Depression. This greatest generation took it so much further and maybe overdid it. And now the younger generation says, I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to work that late. That extra amount in my paycheck or health issues that brings up from overwork isn't worth it to me. I've seen what it's done to my parents. And so 3 things we can affirm with millennials is their communal focus, their innovative focus, and their work-life balance, their priorities focus. I think those are 3 things we can affirm, and even on the whole, maybe does better.
And I would also add their global awareness and perspective. Because one of the reasons I love visiting with them is that they do see some additional connections because it's been part of their world. I think for me, the only books that I read when I was growing up was Farming Magazine. For those of you who don't know, I'm from a ranch in North Dakota. So I had Farming Magazine and National Geographic. So that was my exposure to the world, was National Geographic. It was good, but it is nothing like the perspectives that this generation has. And those different kind of neural connections, I believe, feed into that innovation and creativity and just having some new ways to look at things that allow us to dream up new products, tap new markets, serve new clients. So when we bring our expertise together with their different perspectives, it can open up some new vistas for us. So I would add that to your list also, Brandon.
Hey, great, Danita. Really appreciate that. Any initial thoughts on that passion question?
Well, from a passion perspective, there's two things that I see uh, with the millennials that I interact with. I do believe that there is a passion for a community, that they prioritize that, and it becomes a critical part of where they choose to live, where they choose to work. Was talking with a millennial last week who had an interesting perspective. He said, when I go home in the evening, I am so, online doing things, that the only place that I really have those real connections is at work. That's where I belong. So he says, so I am actually looking for a lot from my workspace. And I thought that was that was some good insights for us to be aware of. So from a passion perspective, that community portion, I see it as a passion. The next that I see is a passion to solve the problems of the world. Now, sometimes as a young leader, they may not know how to do that, but there is a passion to solve. An example, a number of years ago, we went to the interior of Tanzania to oversee some projects that I was involved in. We took our son and our daughter with us. Danae was probably 15 at the time. And this was the first time in her life that she saw how critically important food is. I mean, up to this time, you go to the grocery store and you have food everywhere. And now she's exposed and sees that food doesn't come readily to everybody. And if you don't have food, the impact on the health of the children and the health of the village. And now that created a passion in her to solve a world problem. How food justice and food security. I'm like going, hey, go for it. And so I believe that we have this whole generation of young leaders that have a passion for how to solve problems, whether they're in their local community or globally. And that's something that we can tap into. So, Brandon, with that, as you and I have been talking about this, there's a model of leadership, or a framework of leadership, that I personally have found really helpful. So are we ready to move into the practical tool, the challenge invitation?
Hey, absolutely, Danita. We want to bless you guys with a practical application, something that you can walk away with and say, hey, where do I have strengths? Where do I have weaknesses as a leader? And hey, what's something you can give me, Brandon and Danita, that makes me better starting even just this afternoon? And one of the things we find is that everybody is wired to both belong and make a difference. We all need a place to belong and a cause to believe in. We're wired for that. And so as we engage with other leaders, we're constantly needing to calibrate both an invitation to relationship, invitation to connection, encouragement, community, as well as a challenge to grow and get better. None of us on this call want to be just in community, having fun, rah, but don't actually get anything done. Don't actually get results. Don't actually make a difference. At the same time, if we're making a difference and we're going for it, we're being productive and we're being profitable, but there's no community, there's no collaboration. It's a toxic culture. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and everyone's working so hard just to kind of beat up and get ahead of everybody else, when nobody wants to work in that kind of stressful culture as well. And so as leaders, we need both. We need both this reality of high invitation, okay, up here, okay, as well as high challenge over here. And if we calibrate both high invitation and high challenge, we will get a culture that's both productive and connected. That's what we want. We want a productive and connected culture. Now, you might say, yeah, great, Brandon, high invitation. We need to be relational. We need to be connecting, but we also need to speak truth. We need to challenge. We need to hold people accountable. The businesses need to get results. All right, we need both. That makes sense. So what's the catch? Well, the catch is that every single person on this call is either really good at connection, really good at invitation, really good at relationship, really good at belonging. You're the good cop, if you will, or you're good at challenge, at task, at truth telling. And so the reality is we need to discern, even on this call, what am I naturally good at? Am I really good at invitation? I'm the encourager in the office. I'm positive. I enjoy unity. And if I'm not careful, if I only live out of my strength as a leader, I am going to create a cozy culture. There are some of you on this webinar that if you're not careful, you're the good parent at home. You're the one that always acquiesces for ice cream and let them get away with it. And even in the office, you love that unity, that connection, that celebration. If you're not careful, you create this cozy culture. Others of you are saying, you know what, I'm more of that thinker. I'm more of that high challenge truth teller. And I want to make it happen, get it done. Great, we hit our goals for June, but now it's July, right? And if you're not careful, if you're all challenge and no invitation, your best leaders will leave over time because the culture is just too stressful. We are wired for this reality of both purpose and play, connection and truth, invitation and challenge. Now, if you're that absent and aloof leader where you're not challenging or invitational, then you've got a boring culture. All right, your best people are looking for jobs while on the job, right? On the internet. And so what you want to be is you want to be high invitation. You want to be a person that knows how to connect, knows how to celebrate, right? Knows how to say, give that attaboy without, without an agenda. Just leave it at that. But you also need to learn how to speak truth and to hold accountable and to deliver and get results even when it hurts. And, we can talk more on future calls about how you grow if you're one or the other. But the reality is every single person is either a thinker or a feeler. They're either naturally bent towards invitation and left to their own devices are going to create that cozy culture, or they're a truth teller. They're task oriented. And again, left to their own devices, either at home or at work, they'll create that stressful culture. And so you got to know, where's my strength and where is my weakness? And how can I get better so that I'm a leader that both creates a place of community, but also holds accountable for results. And with that, we see when leaders are able to grow in that, empowers people. Because I know I belong, but I know my best is expected. And potential isn't left on the table with high invitation, high challenge, empowered cultures. But it takes some work because no one's good at both. We all need to grow and go for it, okay? And so with that, we even just want to see who's on the call. I'm going to put a poll up here for just probably a minute, but just ask yourself, what are you better at? Are you better at challenge or are you better at invitation? All right, think about where you're at with your kids. Think about where you're at the office. Are you more high invitation or high challenge?
So, Brandon, it would be very interesting to ask my kids this.
Fair enough.
I'm pretty sure I know how they would answer.
Yes. Well, hey, while we're letting people finish the poll here, Danita, where do you lean if left to your own devices? Are you more high invitation or high challenge?
You know what? If left to my own devices, I'm much better at the challenge. In fact, I often laugh that all the books in my library, every single book has a chapter on listening and asking questions, because that is my life challenge.
Fair enough. Very good. Well, we make a great pair then, because I tend to be more higher invitation. So I'm the one that wants to celebrate and always looking to have fun and, you know, give the kids cookies before dinner and all that. So, hey,
now, just to let you know, Brandon, I will always have a party. I'm looking for any excuse for a party. So,
and there'll be a great challenge at the end of that party. Hey, well, fair enough. Hey, thanks for taking the poll, guys. We're at almost 80%, and it's the invitations have it. So this is a cozy, fun group we've got here. It's 57% invitation, 43% better at challenge. So that's such a great reflection tool, guys, to just be honest about your blind spot and your weaknesses as a leader, and say, you know what, wherever I'm not good at, next week. Okay, even next week, how can you get better at the other one?
mm-hmm.
How can you get better at the other one?
Mm-hmm.
Ask your spouse, ask your direct reports. Hey, what does encouragement look like? What does challenge look like? And get their feedback as you can, as a way and a tool to get better. And if you'd like to know more information about that tool and other leadership tools we have, and what it looks like to grow and embrace those, and to innovate and contextualize those for your specific culture. That's one of the things that Danita and I love to do as coaches and consultants. So with that, Danita, wrap us up here. Bring us home. We've walked through the key problems we see, the trends we see with this next generation, this younger generation. You've walked through 6 solutions, 6 things we can be good at. And we highlighted 3 of them around being a leader worth following, looking at myself first. Does anybody want my life? Also, community, some great ideas around passion and causes. What's our company cause? Do we even have one that younger people could get excited about what we're doing with our profits, and make the difference we're making in our community? And we just gave a tool, a self-reflective tool, so that we are getting better first before we're asking them to get better, looking at invitation as well as challenge. So with that, wrap us up. What's some final thoughts and some next steps you can share as we look to land the plane here today?
Well, so I'm thinking about some next steps. I see 4 options, or 4, maybe 5. Let's go. The first one is that Brandon and I are teaming up for a 6-series webinar series. I guess I'm using series twice, but you know, a 6-session where we do a deep dive. Every single session, we're looking to provide a practical tool. So that's number 1, and there's information on my website, or send either Brandon and I an email, and we can get you some more specific information on that. Some of you are interested in individual coaching. Both Gordon and I get involved in executive and leadership coaching on a one-on-one basis. And we have a team that supports us, so we can make certain that we've got a coach that can align with what your objectives are. Others of you are more interested in enterprise consulting, either on business growth strategies, sales growth strategies, and I'd also like to add in there culture growth strategies, and culture and communication growth strategies. So those are some areas that Brandon and I work in. And then also, as a next step, next week I'm going to be sending you a Survey Monkey, and would love any insights and feedback that you have that we can use to continue to improve what we're doing and what we're delivering, to make certain that we are addressing the specific questions you have. And then finally, if you're not connected with us, please do send us questions, send us ideas, send us articles. We want to be of service to you in however we can. So with that, I am so grateful that you've joined us today, and look forward to the continuing dialogue and journeying together.
Thanks, guys. That's a wrap. We'll look forward to following up and connecting with you soon. Bye-bye.